Hi, sweet souls. Welcome to I'm Awake Now What podcast with your host, Krista Xiomara. This is the 8th week of our summer series. I'm excited to be here with you guys on this last week to wrap up everything we've learned and to tightly pull together all of the concepts and ideas that I've covered with you about my own personal journey, about walking away from my religion of origin, healing from that experience, finding my own foundations, and moving back into alignment with myself, which this week is all about coming home to ourselves. So whether you've gone on a spiritual journey or not, the world often asks us to be something we are not. It asks us to pull ourselves constantly away from ourselves. And so even if you haven't left your religion of origin, this is a good episode for you to listen to as a reminder to stay in alignment and in integrity with yourself, aligned with your core values, and often coming home to yourself when you've pulled yourself away. Especially for the women of the world, we are asked to be a lot of things to a lot of different people. So it's important for us to remember to stay authentic to who we are, to never turn away from ourselves, to disappoint everybody, as Glennon Doyle says, besides ourselves. So let's get into this episode. What we're going to do is I'm going to do a recap of all of the weeks and just touch base with you on all of the things that were really important to me. So just as a reminder, this summer series, the purpose and intention is to provide a safe space for individuals to explore, create, and release belief systems. And the mission and vision for this week is to usher in a new global expansion of our communities through open dialogue, spirituality, reflection, inner healing, and self-love. And as a disclaimer, all individuals engaging in and/or participating in any portion of this course are encouraged to seek professional help and any other supplemental mental health assistance they might require. The topics covered in this course are sensitive, and there is a possibility of becoming triggered. I'm Awake Now What podcast is not responsible for any trauma incurred while completing this course. Mental health resources are provided after each weekly course and available on all podcast platforms wherever this podcast is distributed. So we're doing this week a little bit different. I'm going to review all of the previous weeks, and then we're going to go into coming home to yourselves. There's not additional homework for you at this point. I'm not even doing a reading recommendation or giving you podcasts to listen to. So it's just for us to cover everything, review, and tie it all together with coming home to yourself. For those listening at home, this week's inspired quotes, the first one is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it says, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." And the second quote, the second inspired quote, is by the unbelievable, incredible Brené Brown. She says, "The irony is that we attempt to disown our difficult stories to appear more whole and more acceptable, but our wholeness, even our wholeheartedness, actually depends on the integration of all of our experiences, including the falls." So that's such a good quote. And as we've talked about, that even painful experiences that we have come through with our religious wounding and trauma can be transmuted and can be transformed. And none of those experiences have to be wasted, nor do we have to hold any resentment towards them. We can use them as fuel to transform us into the human being that we want to be, and to create a world around ourselves that reflects our core values, the world that we want to integrate into ourselves, and the way we want to show up for people in our lives in a different way that we were brought up. So the falls, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the hardships, they are all beautiful opportunities for us to lean into the experience and create transformation that is meaningful, that is hopeful, that is optimistic, and brings us back to ourself every single day. So in review, week 1, we talked about religious trauma and wounding. So I want to go back on these definitions and just circle back about what they were. So religious trauma is a function of both chronic abuses of harmful religious experiences and the impact of severing one's condition with one's faith and faith community. Religious wounding is deep wounding and mental or physical damage caused by religion. And religious trauma syndrome is when a trauma and wounding have occurred in a person because of a harmful, in quotes, mental, physical, emotional, or psychological religious experience or separation from a religious faith or community has caused long-term psychological damage. So I want to validate your experience again. I've been trying to do that every week with you here. If you have been wounded, and the wounding and the trauma is a spectrum, and in that spectrum of things that could have happened to you, there are sub-spectrums, right? So, you know, the wounding that incurred for me was deep indoctrination, self-loathing, forced religious experiences, and within those experiences themselves was a spectrum of wounding and trauma that happened and how it affected me and informed my life as an adult and the decisions I made. So you have to think about it not just as the wound and the trauma, but then go down a level below that and figure out what is the severity of the wounding and the trauma. And it's important to recognize that if you're addressing your religious wounding and trauma, you're going to need help. And so week after week, I've been telling you, get a therapist, get mental health, get a support group, get people who understand you, find people that understand what you've been through, because it is a hard task to address everything that happens to you. And again, I was not sexually abused in my religious community, but that's a huge part of religious wounding. And to unpack and to address that requires a lot of assistance. So I want to encourage you again, whatever your wounding or your trauma is, and it is a spectrum, and within that spectrum are subsets of severity of wounding and trauma that have to be addressed. Get the help that you need, and don't be afraid to ask for it. The other thing I wanted to remind you about week 1 is that when you leave your religion of origin, a lot of us, our religion of origin is tied to our families and to our friends and to our communities. And leaving can cause unnecessary wounding and additional trauma. And so when you decide to leave or you're thinking about leaving, I want you to be mindful about that happening and to, one, try your best to not take it personal, and to trust yourself with a deep level of unconditional love and faith within yourself, not even faith in God or the church or anything, faith within yourself that you're moving your life in the direction that is right for you to live a whole and full life. As you move away from your religion of origin, people may not agree with you, and that's absolutely okay. It's not for you to feel that you have to justify your actions to anyone or to any person that is challenging you on your departure. What your goal is to minimize any additional wounding and trauma that you can. And as we talked about last week, we talked about creating like really healthy boundaries. And in leaving your religion of origin, you have to do that in order to heal, and it's important. And you have all the permission in the world to do that, to create those beautiful protective boundaries, to preserve within yourself what needs to be preserved in order to create that long-term healing. So that's what I'm going to remind you guys about week 1. And week 2, I brought in all of the topics we talked about. Week 2 was about doubt and walking away. And doubt and questioning are healthy and necessary for our personal development, expansion, and empowerment. And again, this goes for every aspect of our life. Right now, in our own political system, people are very polarized, and they've gone into areas that are echo chambers of their own ideas. And that's dangerous because we're all different, and it's important for us to question, and it's healthy for us to question. And if people have a problem with you questioning, that should be like your first red flag that something is amiss. There's nothing wrong in trying to gain understanding. That's vital in becoming a human being and creating that critical thinking that we need. So when you start to doubt and walk away, 1, it's completely normal. 2, it's part of the process. It's step 2. And that doubt and walking away happens in a lot of different ways. And there are different areas in which your doubting and your walking away happen. There's the category of doubting your religion, doubting your religious teachings, and then doubting your teachers, your advisors, your priests, your pastors, your parents, and even yourself. And so as you doubt, what I want to encourage you to do is, instead of feeling fear or overwhelm, or what's something else you could be feeling if you're doubting yourself, like maybe you're feeling upset with yourself for doubting in the first place. What I would encourage you to do is to suspend any judgment on yourself if you can through the doubt, and just allow yourself the luxury to doubt and ask those questions that you've always been wanting to ask, and challenge the answers that were given to you as a means to just shut up. I gave you an example in the doubt and walking away when I asked my priest about test tube babies, which was only one example of many things I tried to challenge that were always, a closed case and nothing was explained. It's okay to question, and it's okay to question their responses. And it's completely normal to do that and to not judge yourself through that process. And when you start to walk away from your religion of origin, it's multifaceted. And sometimes all of the facets of you walking away are happening in parallel or in different times. And as I mentioned to you in my process, like leaving mentally was the first step. The doubt began to come in. I started to see things that I could not reconcile within my religious community, within my religious teachings, within my religious advisors. There were holes in the certainty of what they taught. There was holes in the actions they lived by, and the commandments that were reverberated from their lips, but their body said something different. And as an impressionable child, you start to see that, like, oh, what you say and what you do are two different things. And that's really hard to reconcile. And that creates that crack inside of you that lets the light in. The light is the doubting, and it's a beautiful place to start from. And when you leave mentally, the next step might be leaving psychologically, where you start to say, you know what, I don't know if I believe that, I'm supposed to be submissive to my partner. And maybe I don't believe that only a man and a woman can be in a marriage together. That doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel right to the core of who I am and my internal knowingness. And then you leave physically, because that's the safest next thing for you to do, to create that space to allow yourself to explore and to check in with yourself, to know whether or not this is the right next step for you. And then you leave spiritually without any ideology sometimes. And sometimes you dive headfirst into another ideology, whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism or Sufism or Judaism or something non-denominational. All of that is okay. You're going to continue to figure it out the rest of your life and continue to doubt and question and walk away and come back. All of those things are completely normal. And in walking away, sometimes there can be a lot of fear and loneliness, and you need support. You need a community that can lift you up when you're feeling afraid, and can lift you up without judgment and without reciprocity, or without feeling like you owe them anything. So it's important for you to understand that any fear that you feel usually is residual conditioning from your previous life. And two, is normal. It's normal to fear something new. It's normal to fear the unknown. It's normal to fear not knowing what's next. But again, I strongly encourage you to come back to yourself over and over and over again. Coming back to yourself, affirming within yourself, this is the right step for me. I'm making all the right decisions for myself. I don't know how, but the right people are coming into my life. I don't know how, but the right tools that I need in order for me to continue and sustain myself on this journey are coming into my orbit. And just come back to self-referencing yourself over and over again, because our religious experience teaches us to give all of our power away. It teaches us that our power is given to a God who deigns whether good or bad things happen to us. A God who is constantly tallying our actions and our mistakes and our flaws and our shortcomings, and then reflecting to us in our life, whether it means we don't have money or love or connection or relationships or family or children. It's not a tit for tat with God, and it never will be. More than anything, if you go on this journey, you start to understand and know deep within yourself that God, the universe, the creator of all beings, the thing that made us, is here within us and is constantly looking at ways to co-create with us, and has given us a great deal of agency over our lives. It's not even about free will. That's a Christian idea of free will. Free will still implies that we've decided to walk away from God, and we are never walking away from God. We can't. It's everywhere. It's in us all the time, all around us. And even if you don't know what God is or want to even call it that, there's still the magic and the majesticness of the air in our lungs, the sight that we have to see, the beautiful nature that we live in that reflects to us something bigger than ourselves, that questions, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? How can we make this place better? So week 3, we talked about embracing uncertainty, which in and of itself can be a spiritual practice. Surrendering, embracing uncertainty, creating that deep faith within yourself, and self-reliance and co-creation is beautiful. So I said in embracing your certainty that it can save your life after you've left your religion of origin, because there is so much unknown about what you're going to do. And embracing uncertainty requires you to confront your own fears. You have to figure out what's next for you. You have to be committed to self-education. You have to know that finding inner happiness is a byproduct of uncertainty. And then you have to work to build your internal strength and confidence, and then go back and create some sustainable practices within yourself that allow you the opportunity to continually embrace that uncertainty. Because in a religion, it's very structured. You go every Sunday, or you go every Sunday and Wednesday, or you go every day. When I was in my religious experience, there were years that I went to church every day, and that I went to prayer meetings twice a week, and that I spent a great amount of time in what they call the sacristy, communing with the host, trying in earnest to create a relationship inside a building with a God who wasn't talking to me. And they're good about creating structure and process. And so when you leave your religion of origin, you have to look inside yourself and ask, do I need to be nourished spiritually? Do I need to cultivate a relationship with a God? Do I believe in a God? And whether you have the answers to any of those questions, at this moment or not, it is important that you continue to nourish yourself in the way that feels most authentic and most pure to what you know about your own life experience and what you need. So embracing uncertainty can be a really, really beautiful experience, and there's something really wonderful about letting go and saying, I don't know, and that's okay. And I don't know either. And I often say on the podcast, like, I still don't know what's out there. I still don't know what created us. I still think calling it God is too small. I think even the universe is too small, because that in of itself has limitations. Divine source, the creator of all beings. I mean, we can call it anything and it still doesn't feel big enough to me. I think that when we leave this earth, I feel and I sense and I know that the one true thing that exists within us is this energetic body that is moving us around and lives within us and exchanging energies with people. And when you love somebody, you can feel that love emanating from like the core of your being. And you can push that love out to somebody. And so when we leave this place, I hope that our energy finds these answers. And I'm comfortable saying I'm in this human experience and I don't know the answers, and that's okay. Week 4, we talked about inner healing. So I just wanted to remind you that self-healing is defined as the process of recovery, generally from psychological disturbances and trauma, motivated and directed by the individual, guided often only by instinct. And it was important for me to put this definition in here for you so that you had language to match your own experience and what you were going through, and knowing that when you're creating inner healing and self-healing, it is very much instinct motivated. And the tools that I've created for you in this 8-week series might not resonate with you. But what I encourage you to do is just sit down and journal and think about what you need to create your own healing. Maybe it isn't creative artwork. Maybe it isn't talk therapy. Maybe it's dance therapy. Maybe it's going on silent retreats. Maybe it's swimming. Maybe it's hiking. You have to discern for yourself through your own instinctual nature, your intuition, your internal knowingness, your GPS that tells you, this is what I need. This is what I feel will make me feel good. And the best way to test your theory is to go do that thing and see how you feel, and to move that trauma out of your body and move those psychological disturbances out onto paper, onto canvas, in telling your story, in sharing what you've gone through, in community with other people who understand you. And in creating inner healing, there were, 3 main areas that you needed to focus on, which was self-healing, which is like assessing at the origin of where you're starting from once you leave your religion of origin, assessing what requires internal healing right now. You know, for me, my healing required, one, for me to heal my brain from the indoctrination and practice thinking for myself, practice critical thinking, practice questioning, integrating doubt, challenging, not just going along with the status quo because that's what I had been taught. And to learn what did I want out of my life now that nobody was telling me what it should be. So for me, my first assessment was, how do I come home to myself, and how do I stay in alignment with who I am now that I don't have the distraction of a church or a priest or my family saying, you need to do this, you have to be this thing, you have to show up in the world like X, Y, and Z. So I want you to ask yourself, you know, assess your own internal healing. What is the biggest thing that you need? And write them all down. You know, after the indoctrination came, you know, being comfortable with speaking my truth about what was going on and what I had experienced. And then there was the baggage of the sexual shame and trauma that was put on me because I was a woman in a fundamental Catholic church that told me my body was wrong, my body was sin, my body was lustworthy. And loving myself and loving my body and not turning away from it and looking at it with love and compassion and awe. So whatever those things are for you, you have to just really take stock of what requires self-healing and see what tools you can assign to each one of those areas of healing. And then we talked about familial healing, and this is an important one. If you have the opportunity to do this with your family, if they've rejected you, if they've shunned you, if they've ostracized you, if they've said, you know, you don't believe what we believe, so you can't be a part of this family. If at some point they come to a place where they accept you, you know, ask for that healing, ask to be heard. But if you can't, the other piece of that, which we talked about in inner healing, is that sometimes you're creating your own internal healing alone. And you can heal from the wounding and the trauma that somebody has inflicted on you, even if they're not there. You have the power to do that. You have the power to give forgiveness, to seek forgiveness, and to receive it whether or not that person is there. Because it's all inside of us, and we have the opportunity to release ourselves from the binds of that wounding and that trauma. And that if the person is not ready to meet you there, or to give you what you need, or to say, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that to you, I shouldn't have led you down this path, I'm sorry I hurt you, I'm sorry you went through that, I'm sorry I thought I was doing the right thing, you can still heal from all of that. You just have to do it by yourself and envision that person and bring them in and say whatever it is you have to say to them and let go, and do that as many times as you need to until it's gone. And it's a beautiful forgiving meditation that you can do the entirety of your life anytime you incur a wounding. And the religious healing, I think, is a very long process, depending on how much you were integrated into your religious community, how much you were indoctrinated, how much wounding and trauma you incurred. There are still moments, I said it on the first week, that I still get caught up. I was at my sister's house, and because it's the pandemic, they were having to attend church at home. And I was there for the weekend, and I was in the kitchen painting my sister's kitchen nook while they were listening to church. And I got really triggered in that moment. because they were inducting a new priest into their parish, and he was about to be taking his own vows. And I got very triggered by one statement in particular, is when the priest was addressing the novice priest and reading down the sort of edicts that were coming through, there was this one statement that said, like, even if you know what we are saying even if you disagree with what we're saying in this church, or your beliefs don't match what the church's teaching are, you are willing to forget your own belief systems and blindly believe what we say. That was so triggering to me. And I thought, this priest is in that moment, this novice priest who's about to take a vow, all these vows for the rest of his life. The first vow is to say, I'm not going to think for myself. And the first vow is to say, I am not going to question or challenge anything the church brings to me, because now I'm a sleepwalker, I'm a zombie, I'm a sheeple. And that was so triggering to me, because that happens early on in our religious experience. They teach us to not think for ourselves and to blindly have acceptance and faith of whatever they believe, and that is so wrong. We shouldn't have to believe what is taught unless it feels true to us. As a human being, we have unalienable rights. We have the ability to think and to be and to breathe with or without a religious community. So the religious healing, it takes time. It can be done. It requires a multifaceted approach sometimes. And you have to be patient with yourself as you go through that religious healing. And you never know when you will be triggered. There are some words I can't even say that trigger me still to this day. So be patient and kind and loving and tolerant of yourself as you work on this religious healing that can be so painful, to extract all those experiences out of ourselves and to transmute them and to look at them with objectivity and without any charge. You know, that's the goal, to have no charge with that feeling, with that experience, is to look at it as it was something that happened in the past. I'm healed from it. I feel whole in myself, and I feel that experience taught me this, that, and the other, and I'm leaning on my own wisdom and my own experience to pull myself forward. And that transmutation and that transforming of that healing is critical, and it's at a very empowered place to be. And in the religious communities that we grow up in that teach us not to be empowered, to give all our power over, and we take it all back. We get to take it all back, and we get to live from this empowered space, and that's really, really beautiful. Week 5, we talked about awakening, and I put this quote up again from week 5 about from Albert Schweitzer, and he said, the path of awakening is not about becoming who you are, rather it is about becoming who you are not. And in week 5, I touched again on the questioning and the softening and the tolerance and oneness and knowing. And bringing us back to that week, you know, the goal is breaking your old thoughts, integrating that critical thinking, introducing new thoughts, softening to the ideas of others without feeling challenged, but being curious and unattached to your own, you know, ideas and their ideas, and then letting your ego soften as well. And then creating that internal tolerance for yourself so that you can give it to yourself and then turn it outward into others. And as you discover what you believe and want your life to become, that you have, you know, the strength and the confidence and the clarity to live it. And then creating inner compassion and kindness for yourself to sustain yourself throughout your awakening. That's super important. And then this oneness and this connection to all is understanding that our lives are inextricably linked together. And as such, as we care for ourselves, we care for each other, right? So the way we love ourselves is the way we love the world around us. And so it's important to start first with ourselves, which is the antithesis of what the church teaches you. It teaches you to be of service to others and never be of service to yourself, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. As cliche as that sounds, it is true. You can't give and give and give and give unless you're giving to yourself. And I just want to remind you that in having this awaken, or having this knowing, this deep knowing within you, it starts to become uncovered in your awakening, because you start to hear your intuition. You start to, operate from your instinct and listen to yourself without external validation or external inputs. And you're able to stand on your own 2 feet as yourself. And you're awakening to so many things through the entirety of your life. And because our conditioning when we're in religious communities is so embedded and so deep, that you're creating these new neural pathways in your mind that require the neural pathway to deaden the old conditioning, the old thought to deaden. Then you create a new one and practice living that new neural pathway, that new statement, that new way of being, that new way of living, that new way of thinking happens over and over and over. That you keep addressing things as they come up, and this awakening is for the rest of your life. And that is not to scare you or to overwhelm you, but just to know that it's this a beautiful, beautiful unfolding of yourself over and over again, and meeting yourself over and over again, discovering things about yourself you never knew because you never had the opportunity, because your church was asking you to be a carbon copy of everyone else. So it's this beautiful dance. It's this love story, our awakening. It's a love story of us coming home to who we are and to who we truly are meant to be in this world. It's making me choke up right now, because I know it to my core of my being, to come home to myself and to awaken every day, and to look in the mirror and deeply into my eyes and see someone who I love so much, who I choose every single day, is priceless. And you don't get that in religious community sometimes. And you have to teach yourself how to do it. So week 6, we talked about finding your truth. And I have this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh again: to be beautiful means to be yourself. You do not need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself. And that truly is the goal, is that we are always accepting and loving ourselves no matter what. And the foundations of discovering your truth were these 8, ideal things that you practice. Well, the first one was becoming centered and grounded in your own internal beliefs, creating space to explore truth, creating healthy boundaries, no explanations needed, listening to your inner wisdom, intuition, and internal guidance system, recognizing universal truths, creating core values, and speaking your truth. So in working with all of these foundations are about creating a truth that resonates so deeply within you that you feel so much peace and harmony within yourself about what you believe, about how comfortable you are saying you don't know what you believe until you figure it out, being comfortable with the uncertainty, and then creating those healthy boundaries for people who are maybe not as supportive about your own journey, and remembering that you do not have to explain yourself to anybody. You have to do what's right for you in this process, and nobody deserves your explanation. You know, as long as you live in integrity with yourself and you are not harming yourself or harming others in this process, you don't owe an explanation to anybody. And I hope that you're not harming yourself or harming anyone else. But the truth is that sometimes we get caught up in this idea of like, I'm doing something different and it's out of the norm of the people I live with and the community I reside in, and it's not easy to go on this pathway, like I said, through every week. And you might feel you want to explain yourself to somebody, but you do not I'm going to say it again, do not owe anybody an explanation. You have to find out what you believe and what's your truth and what you know to the core of your being, to the depths of your own molecules in your body. And you will find it. And I'll be happy to hear what it is for you. And our truth is different for everyone else. We are only living in this world as ourselves, and we can only meet the world through our own lens, through our own vision, through our own imagination, and through our own self. And that's beautiful. It's like seeing in our own unique color and listening to that inner wisdom and that intuition, your guidance systems, and then also recognizing the universal truths that are self-evident, you know, that we are all connected, that if we lead with love, there's nothing else in this world we have to do, but that's super difficult. It's hard to lead with love, guys, but it is the best, most kind thing we can do. And sometimes leading with love means letting relationships go, friendships go, communities go, old ideologies go. It means that you have to let some things go in order to lead with love, and that's okay too. And creating some core values for yourself. This is so important. When you go on this journey, there's going to be a lot of people who want to sway you in any which way. You're going to read a ton of books, but notice in your journey, when you're reading and exploring and discerning, what are the things that come back to you? For me, it was honesty. It was, you know, a core value that reflected who I was, not turning away from myself. It was the truth that I believe we all are meant to be here for something. And if we live into that purpose, if we truly find what it is, and it doesn't have to be grandiose, like it's not, you know, we live in a world that fetishizes celebrity and money. But sometimes, you know, living into our life's purpose is something as simple as being an honest, good human being on a regular basis, creating as little harm to the world around you and in your own ecosystem by loving and tolerating and accepting those around you. That's beautiful. And then in finding your truth, you have to speak it once you know it. You have to emote your truth out to the world, and you have to let it be recognized, and you have to see it for yourself. And you have to live into it every day and live by it every day. So week 7, we talked about building support systems because it is very important for us to do this on our journey. We are taking ourselves out of our core support system when we leave our religion of origin that, again, is often tied to our family, tied to our communities, and tied to our friendships. And so when you get to a deeper understanding of what you know, remember that you have to create these support systems. And the first and foremost important support system you have to create is within yourself. We talked about creating this self-referencing, you know, instead of going outside and asking for people's opinions and thoughts and ideas, which is good, but can take us away from ourselves. You know, check in with yourself constantly, check in with your knowingness, check in with what you believe, check in with what you know is true. Affirm within yourself all the things you know about yourself to be true. Affirm within yourself all of the things that require building and construction inside of you, whether that's your confidence, whether that's your ability to speak your truth, whether that's your ability to stand on your own 2 feet and say, I matter. This is important to me. Building those internal support systems and that internal strength and confidence are integral for you to get to the other side of this journey. Because again, we're taught to hand over our power to someone else. And so sometimes we can feel at the mercy of extenuating circumstances and things are out of control. But we do have a lot of control over our lives, and there's a lot we don't have control over. But what we do have control over is the way we speak to ourselves, the way we lean on ourselves, the way we come home to ourselves, and the way that we have a relationship with ourselves that is good and wholesome and positive and optimistic and has faith within ourselves. Faith might be one of those words that triggers you. So if that's one of the words that triggers you, I want you to change that word to, self-belief. It's important for us to have self-belief within ourselves and know that we matter, that we have purpose, that we are good, that we are whole, and that we are meant to be in this earth, living and breathing as our fullness all the time. And then creating that external support where you need it and where it is right for you to have that external support. It's support groups, it's online communities, it's Facebook groups, it's any myriad of things. It's a yoga class, it's a retreat center. What does that external support look like to you? Is it your family? Is it your friends? It's important for you to make sure you have that support system. And then the creative support, which is, journaling, writing, solitude, meditating, painting, dance therapy, regular therapy, talk therapy, anything that you need. All right, guys. Week 8. Coming home to yourself. We're going to wrap this all up in this one slide here. So Byron Katie says, just keep coming home to yourself. You are the one you have been looking for. What does coming home look like? So I've listed out all of these things, and I'll touch on each one of them a little bit. So coming home to yourself for me looks like loving yourself unconditionally, trusting yourself, having faith or self-belief in yourself, having confidence and clarity in your decisions, never turning away from yourself or disappointing yourself, empowered thoughts and action, and integration of the self. So loving yourself unconditionally, I talked about this psychological term called unconditional positive regard. And it means that no matter what you do, you are always keeping yourself in the highest regard as possible and always giving yourself the benefit of the doubt that you can do better next time. You're going to make mistakes on this journey, whether it's a spiritual or religious journey. We're going to make mistakes and we're going to do things that are wrong, and that's okay. But what's important is to never stop loving yourself through the process of coming home to yourself and uncovering what you need in your life in order for you to have internal peace, happiness, contentment, and alignment with yourself. Trusting yourself, I've said this throughout every single week. You have to trust yourself, trust yourself, trust yourself. It's important for you to trust yourself because, again, the world is asking us to lean on other people. The world is asking us to go outside of ourselves for affirmation, for checking in with other people. And it's very easy for us to remove responsibility from ourselves and hand it over to somebody else, but that's dangerous because then we allow somebody to make a decision about us or influence our decision that is not in our best interest or not even in alignment with what we feel as a human being. So you have to trust yourself. And in trusting yourself, it means you're trusting the decisions, even when you don't understand what decisions you're making sometimes, even when the decisions you're making feel so strange and out of the ordinary. I know for me, when I left my religion of origin, I left my marriage at the same time. And I have all the hindsight of that experience that you can hopefully read in my book, The Alchemy of Kindness, when it comes out, hopefully by the end of this year. But I have the hindsight of realizing I took this leap of faith to walk out of my marriage and to walk out of my religion of origin from one single inclination that was resonating so deeply with me that I knew I had to go. I didn't know what the outcome of me leaving would be, and I didn't know if I would be okay on the other side. But I decided to trust myself. I decided to trust that little voice within me that was saying, it's time to go this way. It's time to take your life in this direction. It's time that all of the fractured parts of yourself that live in the world come together. It's time to love yourself. So trust yourself. Trust every move you make, even if it is the wrong one. Remember that if you make a bad decision or a mistake or you take the wrong direction, that you have the opportunity to course correct. And all you have to do is come back to that course correction as quickly as possible. You don't have to beat yourself up. You don't have to judge yourself for it. You don't have to wish from your own perfectionist side to say, gosh, I wish I'd done that. I knew better. I should have not done that. We don't need to do that to ourselves. And having this internal belief in yourself and faith in yourself that you will be okay, that you will make the right decisions, that you will find the right people, that you will find the right partner, you will find the right friends, you will find the right community. Everything will come together for you so long as you continue to believe in yourself without any doubt. Remove any self-doubt that you have within yourself in this moment. It's unnecessary. You're this beautiful creature that is on this earth and is curious and wondering, how am I going to look myself in the mirror every day and love myself and have faith in myself? And so you're on this journey trying to answer those questions. So have faith that you will find your answers, that you will find the road back to yourself. Having confidence and clarity in your decisions. This can feel strange at first when you come out of your religion of origin because, again, we're taught not to trust ourselves. We're taught to first pray about it. Second, maybe talk to your church elders about it. And by the time you get to a conclusion, you've already inundated yourself with multiple external inputs that take you away from the clarity of your own decision. But I'm here to remind you that you already know. You already know what's right. You already know what is right for you. You already know what the right next step is. Try it. Ask yourself a question and listen what comes up. Usually the first response is the right one for you. Never turning away from yourself or disappointing yourself. Glennon Doyle has this beautiful quote that I used early on, and that it's like you have to, and I'm just going to paraphrase here, but your goal in life is to disappoint everyone else so you don't have to disappoint yourself. And I've disappointed a lot of people in my life, and they've made me feel really bad about that. And old Krista Xiomara used to be really hung up about that. And that was a burden I used to carry. But one day I just realized that's their disappointment and it has nothing to do with me. I'm not disappointed in myself. I'm not beating myself up for the decisions I made. I'm loving myself through it. I'm a better person. I am a more honest, integrity, compassion-filled person today than I ever was 10 years ago. And to me, that's priceless. Disappointing others is normally about their own projection about what they feel within themselves. And it really has nothing to do with you. And disappointing other people means that you are working against their own domestication of you. Don Jose Ruiz talks about this, and it's part of our human experience that we become domesticated. We're wild, beautiful, untamed creatures, and we are whole, and we're complicated. What we are not, is sinful. What we are not is bad. We can do bad things. We can take bad actions. But what we are not is a sinful being that requires salvation. And I want you to remember that you are beautiful and whole the way you are. And if anyone feels disappointed in your life, just remember that's their disappointment to hold on to. It's not yours. And coming home to yourself is about being empowered and taking empowered thoughts and actions every single day. So even when you don't feel courageous enough to do something, do something. Again, when you grow up in a religious community and you're taught to rely on God, if you do something wrong, who's the first person you go running to? It's God. When your life starts to fall apart, who do you go to in your religious experience? God. You plead and you ask for reprieve, please, please don't let this be happening to me. Please, you feel helpless, but you don't have to feel helpless on the other side of this journey because you are so empowered and you are so supported. And life is suffering. And it has nothing to do with God. It has to do with that we are human beings having a human experience with our soul and our spirit. And sometimes life is challenging. And those challenges become suffering sometimes. And we can either allow that suffering to break us down, or we can lean into that suffering and be with it and hold it close to our chest and say, suffering, what are you teaching me right now? What are you showing me? What is being triggered in me right now that I need to look at? What is this suffering and this obstacle trying to help me change about myself? If you come from an empowered state of mind, you can take empowered actions as well. So you can pull yourself out of whatever that obstacle is. You can create creative solutions, and you can put one foot in front of the other, and you can ask for help, and you can lean on the people who know you best and who you trust and who you love to help you take empowered, actionable steps. And integrating the self, I talk about in the beginning of the series, and I definitely talk about it in my book, is being fractured. Our church pulls us away from ourselves. Our society pulls us away from ourselves. There's so many things that we show up into the world, not as ourselves, but as a mirror of what we see the world asking us to be, like always being thin if you're a woman, or if you're a man, always being hyper masculine or a provider, instead of being an artist and a creator and somebody who is attuned with their feminine energy. So when you go on this journey, inevitably It starts out with you leaving your religion of origin and finding yourself. You also integrate yourself. This is one of the most beautiful byproducts of going on this journey and into this unknown path that leads you away from everything you've known and back to yourself, literally pulling in all of the parts of yourself, all the parts that your family said, was not in alignment with the church's teaching, your quirky self, your show business self, your little ham that wants to be out there, but you couldn't be a ham in church, or your introverted self, or the self of the part of you that cares about your community but is introverted and can't quite do the face-to-face acts of service, but you give your money and your time in other ways, and you continue to align your actions with your core values that help you reintegrate all of the parts of yourself that have been fractured into a million pieces. And you do this over and over and over until you're finally at harmony and at peace with yourself. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. It's true bliss. So that is the end of our 8-week series, guys. And I just want to say thank you for everyone who has participated in this 8-week summer series and has trusted me with teaching you how to begin to heal the wounds and trauma from your religious and spiritual experiences. It has been my honor, my true honor, to hold space for you, to light a path for you, to teach you what I know and encourage you to find what you need in order to heal. And please remember, as somebody who's an alchemist, just know nothing is ever wasted. Use all your experiences to transform and reincarnate yourself as many times as you need to. You are such a beautiful being and creature. I know that if you're listening to this podcast, that you have a true curiosity and willingness to look inside yourself and say, how can I live at peace with myself? How can I love myself more? How can I remove all barriers to loving myself? And how can I love myself in a way that I show the world it's safe to be loved and to love me in return? I am so proud of you guys. I am so grateful for you letting me do this with you. I am so grateful to all the people who have come to me with their own specific religious experiences and asked me for help to leave their religion of origin. It is an honor to be able to help somebody birth themselves into their own newness, into their own awakening, into their own confidence, and into their strength. I feel a great sense of honor and respect that they have entrusted me with that process. And I'm so grateful to be able to put the summer series together. And as this summer series has come to a close, I have been thinking about what's next with this. Do I create more courses? Do people want to work with me one-on-one? I'm not sure just yet, but I'm still looking at that. I'm definitely going to be writing a book after I finish my first one, specifically dealing with religious trauma and wounding, because I think it's important for people to have something tangible to hold on to that gives them the courage, the insight, and the processes to move away from their religion of origin and into themselves and into a healthy space. Here are all the mental health resources for those listening on the podcast. In your car, wherever you are, make sure to look at the YouTube version of this video so you can use these services if you need them. Thank you so much, guys, for being a part of this 8-week series and a part of my life, and for letting me come into your heart, into your home, and season 6 is about to start the first weekend in September, and we have an incredible amount of guests. I cannot even tell you. I'm so excited. And I love you guys. And remember to have patience and compassion and inner kindness with yourselves as you work through all the material that I've taught you, as you navigate your life on a regular basis. And remember that you matter, and that I love you guys to the death. And I will talk to you on the flip side of the podcast, season 6. Mwah! Love you guys.